Should we tell the story of how you're so hyped up on caffeine that you just walked into the men's room 2 minutes ago?
Do we have to?
How many times have you used the bathroom in the lower level of this church?
I know, you know what it is because I'm usually always coming from the opposite direction. So I go to the
you can
opposite
make all
door,
the
but I was coming
excuses
from
you
this
want,
direction,
but,
so I went into that door. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it did a little near.
Yeah, you've had too much caffeine.
I have had too much caffeine. I can feel my heart. Do you feel it?
No.
Can you hear it?
Thanks for joining us on the Clarify podcast, where Kelsey and Ben answer any questions that you, the congregation, have texted in. Do you have questions? Are you confused? Let us clarify.
In regard to Andy's illustration of the fish bumper sticker, I often see people wearing crosses that don't always seem to behave in Christian manners when I see them wearing the crosses. So it's not universal, and some people that wear them act perfectly appropriate, but I'm just wondering, does that cross a line? They said cross a line, no pun intended, sorry. Does that cross a line that the second commandment tells us not to cross? So is the image of the cross or the image of the fish representing God or just our belief in that God? So they're talking about the second commandment of do not make graven images. Is that what it is? Okay.
There's people that would argue that is a second commandment violation. There's some churches that are just like, if there is a picture of Jesus, that is a second commandment violation, just like a painting and Jesus is in it, or a figure that represents Jesus. I don't think that does. I also don't really care generally, just because I don't think that not that that's not necessarily important, but it's not important. Like if there's a picture of Jesus in a painting that somebody, I saw a picture the other day. Have you seen that one where there's actually I think it's like a 3-part painting series where there's like a lamb in a forest and there's a guy running after him, fuzzy in the background.
Yes, I have. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, like that picture.
Yeah.
Some people would say that's a second commandment violation because there's an image representing Jesus, and I'm like, but Jesus was a person.
Yeah.
Like if Kodak existed back then, there would have been a picture of him.
They're not trying to draw like God the Father or the Holy Spirit as something that he's not depicted as in the Bible.
Right, and even if there was, unless there's some nefarious purpose behind it, or it actually is somehow being worshipped, which was where I was going with. I think the cross could be. I think it probably has been, taken beyond just like a symbolic symbol.
Okay, so here's what I think on this. Almost everything in life has symbols. Like we are a people that rely on symbols to do anything. Like that's a God that God gave us that. Like we have language as symbols. Everything that we do involves symbols of some sort that signify reality. And as long as the symbol is signifying reality in its truth, God's truth, sorry, I spit a little bit, I do not see anything wrong with that. Wearing the cross should be a reminder to you, like, hey, I'm wearing this cross. How is a physical reminder, how am I representing Christ out in the world when I'm out?
Sure. Like
I have this ring that my mom got me and all my sisters for Christmas, and it has a little tiny cross on it, and I wear it every day. And I like it better than the cross because I can see it. So like when I'm checking out at the store, and maybe I've been like super frustrated with my kids or whatever was going on, then I'm placing stuff on the counter and I'm like, oh, I'm wearing this. How am I representing Christ now? So yes, I mean, I think they're kind of two different conversations. Like, is the symbol bad itself to have a representation of a symbol? But the other conversation is just about discernment and judgment, and like how we're not called to judge someone else's Christianity, but we are. No, that's not the right thing. We are not the end judge of somebody's status with God, you know what I'm saying? But we are called to have discernment on how to behave and what right and wrong looks like out in the world. So another trail that I'm reminded of is in that time when people were making graven images and idols, they were literally have ceremonies and inviting a deity to come live in the thing. And so that's an idol or a symbol that is now representing a reality that is evil.
Right.
And God's not about that.
Right.
So this question was also from a long time ago, and we thank you for your questions. We are trying to get to all of them. So how can social media be used as a tool to reach people, creating content that draws people closer to God, to connect them with a local church and in community?
This is
loaded.
Yeah. I'm cynical in today's social media landscape because of all the algorithms and all of everything. If you're somebody who, and I'm just assuming to some level here, if you're somebody who is very caught up in, the progressive policies and politics of everything nowadays, and
you're going to be fed that.
Which means you're not going to be fed something by a sound biblical church.
Right.
If you're going to be fed something by a church, it's going to be probably of
something
like
that
the
confirms
Joel
your bias.
Osteen, sector or something. Now, I'm not saying that there is no place for social media at all, because there is, but I think at the same time, like what is God calling us to? Us as individuals, us as a church, us as a the worldwide church, whatever we're talking about. What's God calling us to? Because we're not making this podcast, and we didn't create Clarify to create content to be able to be shared and everything. We don't put it on social media. It's on YouTube and everything, and people can share it if they want. But we're not really driving.
We are not monetizing this content.
Well, not even that. We're not taking little clips to promote it or anything. Just because we for one, we don't have the time to do it, but we don't feel like that's something we need to do. Like whoever needs to see it will see it. But
the Holy Spirit is bigger than the algorithms.
Right, exactly. I mean, God works in mysterious ways and awesome ways, and I'm sure that there's people who have been brought to faith by the stupidest little video of whatever, completely unrelated, somehow got them down a rabbit hole, I'm sure. But
You're not saying that it is... You're not saying that if you are called to do that God's not going to use that in amazing ways. What you're saying is that you don't necessarily think it's a strategy.
I think it can be a strategy. I just don't think it needs to be. Okay. I think we're in this time where it's even you want to create a podcast. Okay, we got to get social media going. You got to do this. 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 Mm-hmm. And maybe depending if you're trying to make your living doing a podcast, maybe that's the way you go. But what we're doing with this podcast, it's simply for the people here at Lakeview, and finding that way to create that the whole idea was, how do we have two-way communication out of a sermon or out of anything that's happening on stage? That was the idea. It wasn't to create content. It wasn't to promote anything with Lakeview. We haven't promoted it on social media, so it clearly wasn't that. But it's a good tool, and especially it's a good tool, especially if God's calling you to it. Yeah. But because of when Facebook was in its prime, when we were younger, it was, the things that come up and say hey, you posted this 15 years ago, and it's me complaining about something, food or a restaurant, or complaining about the refs of a football, something ridiculous and stupid. And now you open up any social media today, and it's all just politics and talking points and stuff taken out of context, and it's all just feeding. It's all fed by that algorithm. Yeah. It's all just feeding to outrage. And so I think that there's a place for it, because I think we as Christians need to be in every arena that everyone else is in as well.
Absolutely.
But not all of us need to be there. I don't post stuff on social media just because I really don't care. I don't care.
I had to learn several years back that getting into comment wars is not evangelism.
No, but sometimes it's entertaining.
Sometimes it is entertaining. And but also we need to remember, if you are, I'm sure that if the Holy Spirit is calling to you to an online space, that this is on your mind, but just being Jesus there too, because it's really, really easy to forget behind a screen that the people that you're talking to are people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's all these different layers to it. But I like what you said, that it's got to be God calling you to it.
I don't think it necessarily has to be that, depending on what we're talking about. If you're actually intentionally doing stuff on social media for this purpose, then sure, that's great. But I think we put so much into social media nowadays and think that like we are going to change the world through comment wars.
Right.
Or even change people's minds at this point, because all it is just clickbait. Like that's what social media is. Jesse was just telling me the other day about the argument of that the internet is dead because everything's just made by bots and consumed by bots, and it's just a vicious spiral. So but can it be useful? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that are, a lot of social media and things on social media, and especially like, I mean, this is on YouTube. I mean, that's social media. It
is.
It's not what we typically think of, but it is. And so like that, what was the actual question again?
How can social media be used as a tool to reach people, creating content to grow people closer to God?
Yeah, and so I think something like this, where like that is our goal, is to take what we were trying to be two-way communication and turning that into how do we answer it in a way that brings people closer to God. We've done that on the stage. We've done that in podcast. We have other ideas of what else we could do. But the goal is not to get likes or views or comments or whatever. And there's good ways to use social media, but that's not the end all be all.
Yep.
And we don't have to be on social media. We don't have to consume social media.
Right.
We can be on social media blackout as people or as a church, and we are still going to be lights in the darkness of this world. I mean, our church is growing, and not because of our social media presence whatsoever. Like it's almost non-existent, because that's not our vision, that's not our mission, that's not our goal. Our goal is to grow through relationships and hospitality.
Real relationships.
Right.
And sometimes those start on the internet. I think more rarely genuine relationships start on the internet. But
they even more rarely start on Farmer Wants a Wife.
I can't right now. I can't. I have too much caffeine. You're going to get me too lost on that. It's been a 50-50 success rate right now on the last season. I won't. Okay. I feel as though when we're having this conversation right now, I felt like something just came to my mind that like, and I kind of said it a little bit earlier, but wherever you are, whether that's online or whether that's in real life, IRL for the Zoomers out there. I have a Zoomer sister. She thinks I'm old. But you need to be, we need to be Jesus where we go, like representing Christ. That's on the internet. And I think the most effective way to evangelize is by being who God has called you to be, being worshipful in your life, being unashamed of the gospel, whether that's on the internet or whether that's in real life. I think you should probably focus more of your time on your real life relationships. Yeah. But I find it the most powerful, and maybe this is just me, but when I see somebody on the internet, usually it's my friends, because I'm only friends with friends. I'm not friends with all the strangers. But if I see somebody on the internet who is sharing things unapologetically that are just worshipful to God, and I think that's beautiful, and I think that can be a draw, because he uses things. He uses our worship for more than we understand.
I think what you're saying, to simplify that, is whatever your internet life is should reflect your real life, which should be reflecting Jesus.
Thank you.
And if you're sharing everything on social media, but your real life is not anywhere near that, then that's completely pointless.
Bingo.
I think the church is the same way.
Yeah.
We could go all internet savvy, but is that really reflecting where we want to be as a church? Mm-hmm. More or less not. Not that we're against the internet, but again, if we're planting our flag on hospitality and relationships, that doesn't mean that social media has no place in that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But that's not the core of where we're going. Mm-hmm. And so it does have its place. Yeah. It just doesn't always have its place. And
the person who's asking this question, if you feel like that's something you are being called to, just like every other life decision and everything you do in your life, just prayerfully be led by the Holy Spirit in what you do online and what you do in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
There we have it. Hey, tune in next week. We got something kind of coming out of left field. So I'm not going to bother saying what it is, but we're going to switch things up a little bit next week. So tune in for that one. We'll see you then.